Good morning. Charlie, thanks for all that pressure. It's going to be a really special talk today. And happy birthday, by the way. It was yesterday. He didn't share that part, but it was Charlie's birthday yesterday. Thank you so much. So, good morning. As Charlie mentioned, I just got back from a week-long ministers' convocation with almost 200 other religious science ministers down in San Clemente. I know one person said, sorry you had to go there, but it was actually beautiful. Our hotel was a mile from the beach, and I spent several times there at the beach, and I was stuck with a Mustang convertible to drive around in. I never traveled alone. And almost every companion was a woman, which was interesting. But anyways, one of the things that I came away from that convention with is the love and the power that we have for this teaching in this movement, and the health of this movement, the health of the ministers in this movement. We just got through doing a whole movement-wide, they call it a cultural assessment, and some of you I sent out an email about that a while back, and some of you may have actually participated in that survey. And one of the things that came back that they've kind of found out from that is that the leadership can and sometimes is screwing up at the top, but the churches are doing just fine. We're healthy. It's sort of like no matter what's happening up there, so-and-so is in love with so-and-so and they're not supposed to be, and all this, we're not sure about the education program and all this little detail stuff that everybody at the home office and leadership is all upset about. Meanwhile, the churches are doing great, and they're healthy, and they're excited, and they love this teaching, and people are coming and falling in love with this teaching. So I thank you for being part of that process. I thank you for the love that you have and what you create here, because we are a beautiful, strong, healthy church in this movement, and it's great to be a part of that. So thank you very much. So our talk today, our talk this month is on abundance. Our series this month is we're going to take a look at the idea of abundance. Is that good? Sound good to anybody? Yeah, sounds good to me. So today's talk is on the ocean of abundance. And I love that original reading of being, and I've had the privilege of being on an aircraft carrier, and when you're first going to board it, it looks humongous. I mean, it's way big. It's about as big as these whole grounds, maybe bigger, and it's humongous. But when you get on top of it and you're starting to float out there on the ocean, I was just in the Puget Sound, but it was, still, if you're out in the ocean, it's like not so big, compared to the vastness of the ocean. And that's the nature of what we're working with. William Blake says, one of his most famous quotes, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as it is, infinite." If we could get it, we would see the infinite, which is the complete opposite of lack and limitation, right? We would get the infinite. Ernest Holmes, on the very first page of the Science of Mind textbook, says we see abundance in the universe. We see abundance in the universe. So abundance is the nature. It is natural. It is what it is supposed to be. It is how the universe actually does, really, really does operate. Okay? And so we're going to play with that. Abundance is our natural state. The universe is abundant, and guess what? You and I are one of that. We're one of the universe. We are the universe individualized and expressed. And so that nature of abundance that is the universal abundance is also our true nature. Take a breath. Breathe that in. Breathe in as an abundant being. That is the truth of who we are. We can't get more abundant. We already are abundant. We already are that abundance personified. We can make better use of it sometimes, but we are that abundance personified. Sometimes we're abundant in ways we don't want to be. Okay? Sometimes, I've had people say, "Oh, I have an abundance." And I say, "Why don't you be clear on what you want an abundance of?" Because some people have an abundance of problems, and some people have an abundance of drama in their lives. And some people have all sorts of abundances that maybe they don't want. Okay? So we get clear on what, and we'll talk about that later. But we already are abundance personified. So our work is not to become more abundant. Our work is to become more present to the abundance that we already are. To become more present to who we truly are. See, the state of California recently has been going through an experience, right? For the last couple of years, 3 years, whatever it's been. It's called a drought. And a drought is a lack of water. And the entire western border of the state of California is Pacific Ocean, right? A lot of water. Relatively speaking, an infinitely abundant supply. Well, it's maybe not infinitely abundant, but it's a pretty darn abundant supply of water. That's how we sometimes are. We're sitting in our lives in a drought connected to an infinite ocean of abundance. And the problem is with the state of California and sometimes with us is we don't know how to access it. We don't know how to use it. We can't find a way that works for us to apply that to our current situation, but it's there. And so our work in consciousness is to begin to apply it. Our work is to start listening to our self-talk and hear where it is that we're denying ourselves the abundance. Where are we cutting off our supply? Based on what we say. You know, I mentioned that I had a Mustang convertible. The reason I had a Mustang convertible is because when I was at this convention, when I was signing up for the rental car, for the convention, renting a car for the week, I looked where I normally look, the kind of compact and intermediate cars, rentals. Okay? But I happened that day to say, look, I'm feeling a lot more, and I'm expressing a lot more abundance that I have for a long time in my life. I'm going to scroll farther down. And farther down, they had specialty cars. Now, you should know, if you don't know already, I like cars, okay? And so I had to go take a look, what is a specialty car? Southern California, what is a specialty car? And there it was, Mustang convertible, $100 a week more than the regular interim car I was going. And since the church was already paying for the basic rental car, I just said to Sylvia, hey, I'll pop the other $100 out of my own pocket for that Mustang convertible. Now, I got there, and meanwhile, a couple of minister friends of mine were there. They had a rental car too. It was a Chevy Spark. It's about this big, by about this big, and the two of them, two fairly slender women and their luggage, barely fit in the car. Okay? They didn't have a whole lot of takers to go ride with them. One of my friends needed a ride to the airport at the end of the convention, and there she was, and she was not as slender and young a woman as the other two were, and she's stuffed in the back with her suitcase on her lap for the half-hour ride to the airport, and sort of contorted around just to fit into the car. That person had spent most of the week riding around my convertible, by the way. And so we have a different experience of life when we open up to it. We have a different experience when we listen to our self-talk, and my self-talk said, I'm feeling more abundant. And so I went for a more abundant choice. Okay? And it's not about the outer manifestation. The outer manifestation is a result of my consciousness, which creates my choices. If I'm feeling good about myself, and I'm feeling good about the universe, and I'm feeling in alignment with the abundant flow of life, I make different choices than I make if I'm feeling scared and withdrawn and withholding and living in lack and limitation. Okay? People ask, how do I live in more abundance? This is one of the questions we had recently in the foundations class. How do I live in greater abundance when my bank account looks like this? And it's by the choices you make and the thoughts you think, you start to live in greater abundance. Many years ago, I was working on my wealth consciousness. I was in a personal growth seminar program, and I was working on my wealth consciousness. And at the time, I showed up at this bakery this one morning in the Fairfax region of Los Angeles, and I had been out photographing on the beach. And so I'm wearing like old jeans and a t-shirt, and the sort of thing you would wear at about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to go take photographs on the beach. In other words, I didn't look particularly dressed up. I was driving a probably 10-year-old Oldsmobile cruise liner, with a wooden paneling and this faded wooden paneling on the side, smoking a little bit of oil out the back of it. It was a step up from the 2 years that I had no car and was bicycling around to Los Angeles. Now they have a subway, but they didn't then. And so it was a step up, but I paid $300 for this kind of junker car that got me around. It's the worst car I've ever owned. And so that was my car. But I was working on my wealth consciousness. I knew more was coming. I knew I was in that consciousness. I was building it. I was aware of it. I was declaring that this is not this is my current reality, but this is not, the end of the story. I am more than this, and I'm that. So I walked into the bakery. I'm sitting there trying to choose between two pastries. Now, we're not talking big money pastries. We're talking about, breakfast pastries, $1.50, $2.50, I don't know what it was. And the lady behind the counter said, "Why don't you just get them both? You look like the kind of person who can probably afford to buy the whole bakery." What she saw was not my outer appearance. What she saw and felt and intuited was the consciousness that I was building. And that's how we start making choices. That's how we start building our wealth consciousness. So we start listening to our self-talk. We start noticing our experience of abundance in life. When we come up against it, how do we feel? I had this Mustang convertible, and we went one night down to San Juan Capistrano for dinner, a bunch of us. And I get off the freeway, and I get into this little line of cars, and I notice that right in front of me is another Mustang, hardtop, the kind of, with all the bells and whistles, and obviously the souped-up engine and stuff like that in it. And right in front of that is a Ford GT40, low race car. They make a replica of it now that you can drive. And rather than sitting there going, "Oh, I feel so inadequate because here I am in my little rental," I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, I belong here." Ford, Ford, Ford. Now, by the way, I'm not a big Ford fan. I don't care. But Ford, Ford, Ford. The lineage of race car to hopped-up car to my convertible, and I felt part of it. How do you feel when you encounter abundance out there in the world? Do you feel part of it? Or do you sit there and go, "Oh, that rich jerk," or "I'm not good enough to ever have that"? Breathe. How do you feel? So we start to pay attention to that. And those feelings and those thoughts will tell us what it is that we really believe. And that's where we have to start to work, is what do we really believe? So abundance is a wonderful, nice concept. It's beyond our human ideas, but we want to bring it into the human form. We want to know what's abundance in my life, okay? It's nice to know the theory of abundance. It's nice to know the theory of electricity, but will it turn on my light? Will it work this microphone? Will it make the sound system? Or, all that stuff. I want to know and apply the process of electricity, the principle of electricity. I want to apply my tongue, too. We need to know how to apply it. So how do we humanly apply this principle of abundance? What does it look like? How do we make it practical? How do we make it so it can manifest into an experience for us? How do we move it from that infinite potential of wave into particle in my life? Okay? So first of all is to get clear on what do we mean by abundance. So here's a great definition from Edwene Gaines, who's a wonderful prosperity teacher. She says this: abundance is having a vitally alive, healthy body, relationships that are joyous, satisfying, intimate, honest, and nurturing, work that we love so much it feels like play, and all the money we can spend. Will that do it for a definition of abundance for you for right now? Yes. Working definition, is that pretty good? Yes. There's probably a few more things you might want to add, maybe creative ideas or whatever, like that. But that gives us an idea. That gives us what we're looking for. And it's Spirit's desire to express this through us. It is Spirit's desire. We don't have to con God into please, please, please. It's desire to express this through us already. We are that abundance. We're living in that nature of abundance. Feel that. Breathe that in. Get that through every cell. We are living in that abundance. Feel what that's like. Let your cells expand. Let your body expand. Let your energy field expand. Ours is to let it in. Ours is to get our bloated nothingness, as Emerson says, out of the way. And let it in. There's a wonderful, is Carolyn here? I saw her at the meditation. Yeah, there she is. Hi. gave me this book called The Presence Process, which is the class that she teaches, and I was reading it this week in my spare time, which is mostly the flights. It's our deeply suppressed emotional imprints that unconsciously distract us from an awareness of the present. It's the confused mental states that arise from these unintegrated emotions that lead to the physical manifestations of discomfort that become symptoms of dis-ease. And dis-ease is poverty. Poverty is a disease. Lack is a disease. When we are feeling lack and when we are feeling in poverty, we are not in ease, we are feeling in dis-ease. Okay? And so we want to start to work with that which is lying underneath the surface. A friend of mine has written a book called Give God a Good Time. We're here as God. Let's give God a good time. Yes? Yes. Let us give God a good time so that we fully express our true nature. So what do we do if we're not experiencing the abundance of Spirit at the moment? Or if we want to experience more of that infinite abundance. So you can be living a life that you say, hey, it's really good right now. It's really good. Guess what? If we're talking infinite abundance, there's more. There's even more. And the abundance of Spirit comes with no sorrow added. So it's not more work to have it. It's just more fun to play in it. It's more of an expression of our true nature. So we have this abundance expressing in new and expanded ways. So what do we do if we're not experiencing that? Number one, we become aware that abundance comes from our being, not our doing. Most of the time when we're feeling not abundant, we try and go do something. When the first step is to be aware that we are the abundance of God already, to step back into that. See, when we're not feeling abundant and we start doing, most of what we're doing is out of a feeling of lack and limitation. And so what are we going to create most likely in our life? More lack and limitation, because that's the consciousness, that's the energy we're putting into whatever we're doing. I'm going to do this out of panic, out of fear, out of something, to go and force myself to try and get the abundance that is out there, which it's not, to come to me over here. Instead of recognizing that, wait, no, the abundance is here within me right now. I don't have to go out there. When we view the fact that abundance is outside of ourselves, then we're either desperately feeling in lack or we're stuffing ourselves with stuff because we don't know the feeling of abundance within. When we're living in the abundance of within, we're living in a healthy balance where we have plenty but not too much. Not too little, not too much. We're living in that nice flow in the center. Okay? And so if we're not doing that, we're stuffing ourselves with money, we're stuffing ourselves with relationships, we're stuffing ourselves with work, we're stuffing ourselves with food, we're stuffing ourselves with substances, we're stuffing ourselves with all sorts of things to fill the empty hole, but not recognizing we are already the abundance of the divine gives us. And so that's our first work, is to be aware of that it comes from our being and not our doing. That as we realize our true nature, we are open to its expression, and then it shows up everywhere effortlessly. It's not that we don't do something, but we do it from our beingness, and it's easy. It's easy when we're living in that. Number two, we check our beliefs about God. I can't tell you how many practitioner sessions that I've done with people where I get to a point and sometimes I'll ask them, so what do you believe about, I'm looking at their life and I'm looking at what they're talking about and I go, what do you believe about God? And they'll always start off with what I call the correct religious science answer. I go, well, God is good and God is love and God is everywhere present and God is, and then I look and say, now let's look at your life and do you really believe that? No. So what are my real beliefs about God, and become aware of those? Because some of those old beliefs that a lot of us got when we were young are still working and they're dying hard. We believe in a God that withholds. We believe in a God that wants us to suffer and sacrifice. Our good comes later, place called heaven out there somewhere. Take a breath. It's more spiritual to be poor. Money is dirty, filthy, la la la, all that stuff. Jesus came along and said, it's the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. He didn't say, the Father's going to test you out to see if you're good enough to get a little crumb of the kingdom. He said, it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. As one of my friends said, would you at least have enough propriety to receive it? Okay? So, checking our beliefs about God. What do we believe about God, especially in the realm of abundance? Do we truly believe that God is the infinite abundance of the universe that would love to express itself in, through, and as us as an abundant life? Yes. And is that truly manifesting in, through, and as every single aspect of our lives, right here and right now? Yes. And so as we open to that, as we do that work to start to say, let me get rid of that place where I've got it stuck. Let me get rid of that place where I've got the energy stuck. We work with a practitioner. We work with a prayer partner. We do our work within. We take something like the Practicing the Presence class. We do whatever it is we need to do to start opening up to that and allow that to flow. Number 3, we align with the operation of the universe. See, electricity works in a certain way, and you got to know how it works if you want to be in alignment with it. If you're not in alignment with it, stuff happens, doesn't it? And sometimes not pleasant stuff. We align with the principles of the universe, and the principle that really governs our experience of abundance is a principle called giving and receiving. And I say that as one word together, giving and receiving. It's not one or the other. It's not even one and the other. It's the in-breath, the out-breath of spirit. You can't just breathe in and not out, or just breathe out and not in without having some dire consequences. Eventually your body sits there and goes, okay, if you're too stupid to know how to breathe, let me take, your autonomous nervous system takes over, you pass out and it starts breathing for you, right? So we start to play with that. So we look at both aspects of that. How do we give? First of all, are we giving in our lives? Are we givers? Do we give from joy and abundance? Or do we give from fear? Do we give from bargaining? Do we give out of a sense of obligation? I know prosperity teachers who sit there and go, well, you've got to tithe or the universe will take it from you in another way. Bull! What the heck kind of a universe do you believe in? Now the truth is that as we give, we receive, but it's the consciousness in which we give. I don't believe in guilt-tripping people into tithing or giving. But when we start to naturally understand the flow, that this giving initiates the flow, then we start to play with it. When we start to understand that we can't outgive God, the infinite, we start to be able to give in a sense of greater joy, in a sense of greater comfort, in a sense of greater just being stable in our lives. Gratitude. Years ago I realized, I used to sit there and be one of those people who would calculate out my tip at a restaurant. It's going to be 15%. Well, if she was pretty good, I'll give 16%, whatever. I eventually realized that for the size of most of the meals that I ate, that by giving 50 cents to $1 more than I was already calculating out, I felt generous, and that person felt blessed. And I raised the level of both of our lives for not much money at all. But what it did was change my consciousness around giving. Sometimes it doesn't take much. Sometimes it just takes a switch of gears in the way that we're doing it. And then are we receiving? See, I know people who are fabulous, wonderful giver. I'm going to give and give and give and give. But when we're receiving, it's like we're walking around with an umbrella up over our head as the universe is trying to pour its grace over us and its glory over us, and we got this umbrella up. Oh no, I don't deserve that. No, I don't need to receive anything. I'm good. I don't need any more. Okay? So do we receive gratefully, as Luke said? Do we accept all the gifts of the universe? Do we accept? Do we open our arms and say, yes, I am willing to be gifted. I'm willing to be loved by this abundant, infinite presence. Or do we resist it? Do we sit there with the I don't deserve it, I'm not good enough? Do we have a fear of obligation? If you give to me, I'm going to have to give back to you. Okay. Do we have that Lone Ranger mentality? I'll just go it alone. I don't need nothing from nobody. I've never done that myself, but I know people who have. Or do we have that consciousness of, well, I don't need to really receive. I should just give. Giving is good. I've always been told that giving is good. So I'll just give and give and give and give and give. That's that out breath. Okay? So this week, we're going to do 3 things. Last week I only gave you 2. This week we're back to 3. Okay, you ready for it? Yeah. Number 1, take some time to be the abundance that you are. Take some time to perhaps visualize yourself on that ocean liner, on that large, massive ship out in the ocean, and feel the ocean, and realize the life that is underneath the surface of the ocean. I love that reading that we had today. It's like sometimes we get caught up in the squalls, but the squalls are not the truth of the ocean. If you go down below, underneath the top layer of the ocean, nothing is happening in most of those squalls at the deep levels of the ocean. It's calm, it's quiet, it's centered. We talk about spirit being the changeless in the changing. The form changes constantly. The ocean on the surface changes constantly. Have you noticed? Every wave is kind of moving through. Stuff is happening, it's rippling, it's doing all this stuff. It's constantly in motion, constantly in change. But underneath, it's stable. And underneath there's a life that is teeming that we don't even see. That is the universe. So you take the time to be aware of the abundance that we are. Be aware of the abundance that is already around us. Become aware of all that's around you. Start to look at the nature around you. Start to look in your own home. Start to look everywhere around you and start to become aware of the abundance. Secondly, notice your beliefs and feelings about abundance. Do you have this feeling and belief that it's your natural birthright? Or does it make you feel uncomfortable? Just notice and start to become aware. And thirdly, pick an aspect of your life and allow abundance to bless that aspect. Allow abundance to bless that area. You might say, I want to have a more abundant experience of relationship, of loving relationship in my life. Maybe more friendships, or maybe an abundance of greater health. Okay? Consciously pick that area and say, I'm going to allow the universe to bless me in that area. I'm going to open up to that area and allow it to flow. And so we start to work with spiritual mind treatment. If you know spiritual mind treatment, the 5-step process, we talked about it a few weeks ago. If you missed it, you can get one of the DVD or the CD of when we did that. The first step of spiritual mind treatment is God is. And the second step is I am that which God is. I don't have to make it happen. God is that, and I am that. All the time. No matter what else is going on. Whether I remember it or forget it, I still am one of that. And so I am one of the abundance. And once we know that, then the rest of it flows easily. And so when we practice that spiritual mind treatment, we remember the truth of who we are. And if you don't know how to do spiritual mind treatment, remember what God is and you are that. And you'll be doing just fine. Work with a practitioner. Work with a prayer partner. If you notice in your awareness that you've got some stuff, some blocks, some places where you don't feel good about abundance, you look at it and it triggers off, just stuff for you, work with somebody who can help you work through that. That's what the practitioners are here for. That's what we ministers are here for, is to love and support you. And we invite you to take the time, because you're worth it, to work through that so you can have that fulfilled life that you want. My goal, my dream, my hope is that nobody here is living in lack of any kind. Okay? And so that's what we're here to do, is to support you in that. So I want to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes, and it's about spiritual mind treatment. He says, treatment should incorporate a conscious recognition. Conscious recognition, that's us, that's what we're here to do. A conscious recognition that health has always been ours, that abundance has always been ours. Happiness and peace have always been ours. They are ours now, for they are the very essence and truth of our being. All there is of evil, which includes lack, of whatever name or kind, is an inversion of the eternal good. An inversion of the eternal good, or a lack of awareness. When I was 8 months old, my mother was too sick to take care of me, put me into an institution for 3 months. And I walked around for decades after that with this abandonment complex, okay? Anybody relate? Well, anyways, whether you do or don't, I did. And so I had to breathe that through. And one day I was doing some work on it, some deep work on it, and I realized that, yes, I felt abandoned and cut off from the love of my mother, but you know what? The love of the universe was always present there. I just didn't know it. And so it's for us to recognize that our joy, our health, our happiness, our abundance is always present. And for us to just tap into and say yes to that. To start moving into it. So are you willing to do that this week? Yes. Great. So let's close in prayer. I know that there is one infinite presence. One and only one life. Absolute good, absolute joy, the absolute abundance of this universe. In that infinite presence, there is nothing lacking. All is thriving. Everything, all of it, is the thriving nature of the universe. That infinite presence is all that there is. There is nothing outside of that. There is nothing left out of that. And because of that, I know that I and each person here are one of this infinite presence right here, right now. And so each of us is one of this thriving, expansive, expressive, abundant good that is the nature of the universe. We are that. Each of us is that. There is no separation. And so coming from that space, being in that awareness, standing in that consciousness of the one and our oneness with the one, I speak my word that each of us experiences abundance this week and beyond to a greater and greater degree than we have ever experienced it before, simply because we are willing to say yes to that abundance, experience of abundance, the experience of joy, to the experience of the great good of the universe that is our nature right here, right now. We get it at a deeper level that we are that. The lights go on in a greater degree. We are brighter lights in this universe than we have ever been. Because we are constantly being called to express more and more and more of that light, of that abundant good, of that nature of the divine. This is who we are. And so I know that each person here, at some level of their being, is saying yes, right here, right now, to that good, to that abundance, to that full expression of their nature. And for this I am grateful. And for the good that comes out of this, for the abundance that is spreading in, through, and as each person and our congregation right here, right now, I am ever so grateful. For the joy and the love and the harmony and the health and the vibrational aliveness of this congregation, I am ever so grateful. For the good that shows up in our lives as that. And for the spirit that is within, behind, and through, and as it all, I am ever so grateful. And so I release this word spoken into a law that moves it into form, moves it into experience at our human level right here and right now. That this word is spoken with the consciousness of the divine moving through it, and it has that growth process, it has the ability in that seed, in that soil of the law, to simply grow and expand and express in each person's life. And all we do is say yes, yea, amen, and let it be, and so it is.